Welcome to the November 2022 horoscopes. I am Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. So November is quite the month. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the elephant on the table, and that is the full moon eclipse in Scorpio involving Uranus, because Uranus is on that full moon axis. So I'm not going to lie to you, this is not going to be easy. This particular eclipse is going to be extremely difficult for everybody because this is a deeply personal eclipse. This eclipse in Scorpio falls in a Scorpio decadent and a Scorpio duad, and it is pulling in the energy of this Saturn-Uranus square. Ooh, not easy, not easy. So the things that are important about this particular eclipse that will help you navigate this and come out in a better, happier position on the other side of it are a couple of things, and they won't be simple. So the first thing is this eclipse resonates in ways a lot like an Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. This particular eclipse requires us to be brutally honest with ourselves. So this is the time when we are really going to be forced by circumstances to take stock of who we are, how far we've come with our efforts in life, not in terms of the external stuff, but the internal work, right? Who are we as people? How have I done right or wrong by my relationships? Being really honest in uncomfortable ways. And then from there, acknowledging what we've done and trying to make things whole. Like literally, this whole eclipse is going to set up circumstances that are going to force us to face ourselves in the mirror without any excuses or any little, things that make it softer and fluffier and easier to kind of turn a blind eye to. No. This is full on taking a good hard look at yourself and giving us the opportunity to make right and make whole. Because I believe, I'm not sure, in the 12-step program for Alcoholics Anonymous or even Narcotics Anonymous, in drug recovery, one of the things that they talk about is that at some point while you're doing your journey to recovery, you have to take stock of what you've done in your life and how you've hurt people, and you have to acknowledge that. Then you have to go and try to make things whole or make things right again. Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to do that, but even acknowledging what you've done, owning it, okay, and asking for forgiveness is a huge part of the process. And that's really what this eclipse is about. And that's not easy work. If you've ever known anybody who has successfully gone through recovery, they will tell you, this is not easy self-work to do, and it's an constant and ongoing process. Even when you get the initial foundations done, you still have to revisit it and get support for it, because it's uncomfortable, and it's not our nature to pursue things that feel uncomfortable for us. The other thing with this particular eclipse is the two words I want you to remember. Two keywords I want you to remember is frustration and futility. So the feeling of frustration and futility will be at an all-time high for the first 2 weeks of November. Now, this eclipse occurs on the 8th, but all those Scorpio planets are in the house and in effect all the way through the 16th. And that means also that people will be driven by their feelings, which is powerful and important, and we want to be mindful of that and keep that like at the front of our brains when we're dealing with people. Because the thing about it is, we are feeling creatures. We are driven by our feelings. We can think anything we want, but the reality is we won't do anything until there's some type of feeling that propels us forward to actually take action. Classic example is losing weight. Oh, I should lose weight. I'm going to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. Like, we think about this stuff all the time, big lifestyle changes, but it's not until something occurs that creates a very strong feeling in us. Like, for instance, maybe, being obese has now become a life-threatening issue, right? That is when we take action and we do something. Ask anybody who's ever tried to quit smoking, quit drinking or doing drugs, quit their ex. It's all fine academically. These are all great thoughts, but we never really actually do it, like really commit to it and do it until there's a big feeling behind it. And now it's like, oh, no, that's it. Enough is enough. And this is where we're at for the first 2 weeks of November. So we have to, if you want to get anything out of this time other than frustration and futility, you have to accept that this is a time of deep introspection and being really honest with ourselves. Not unkind, but not making excuses either. So being very brutally honest with yourself about where you're at, what you've done, what you haven't done, how you've wronged people, and set about to make things whole. Okay. That is very much about where we need to be with the eclipse, because circumstances are going to serve you all the tools you need to find yourself needing to get really honest with yourself really quick. Now, the other thing is that it's not a party until, eruptions and chaos ensues. So clearly it's going to be a party with this eclipse. Now, every person on the planet who studies a little bit of astrology is looking at this eclipse and that Uranus involvement, and we're all kind of shaking in our shoes here, me too. So we know that there is the distinct possibility that there could be some type of eruption or explosion or mass event. I mean, we've already seen some of it now, right? Because you're under the eclipse a few days, up to like 4 or 5 days before the eclipse is exact, and another 10 days afterwards. So we've got a whole 2 weeks around that eclipse, with the most of it being on the leading side. But even approaching the eclipse, we're still under it. And we know that with these aspects, there's the possibility of mass events, explosions, eruptions, chaos, things breaking or reaching their breaking point. And we're certainly seeing it. There was the mad crush that has still not been explained in South Korea. And I believe that there was something that made everyone panic, because it's not in the nature of the culture to be like all helter-skelter like that. And also the majority of people that were crushed in that alleyway, which by the way was only 8 foot wide, it was a tiny alleyway, were females. And females typically run away from things in groups. Women run to groups to get away from things. And the only thing that would explain people rushing to try and get into a tiny space like that is if they were trying to get away from something. But we don't know. Information is still coming out. So there is that. So we may see some of this happening because the ignorant, the angry, and the armed are going to be out in force for the first 2 weeks of November. And this may be why we all need to get right with ourselves. What is it? Have a come to Jesus moment. Because at the end of the day, like if we go out today, we go out next week, or we go out, 20 years from now, we want to be able to leave here knowing that we have done what we need to do, and that we have made the things that need to be made whole, and we can leave with a clean conscience and good merit. So if you don't know what good merit is, it means doing good deeds. And if that's a new and foreign concept for you, this is a great time to start learning it. Trust me, it will help. It will help. Now, also the big things that are happening this month is Jupiter is stationing direct at the end of the month. So we're feeling Jupiter all month long. Jupiter is stationing direct in the last degrees of Pisces as it makes its final passage through Pisces. It will not be back here again for another 12 years. This particular Jupiter station is extremely important because of all of the other planetary activity happening with it. So Jupiter is stationing direct at 28 Pisces. It will involve that Mars, which has just stationed at 25 Gemini, and it will be close to Neptune, which is around 23, 24 Pisces, and it will be sextiling Pluto, which is around 26 Capricorn. Blah, blah, blah. In any event, this combination of things signifies some very important things coming to culmination, right? Things coming to a head for completion. So we are literally about to turn a major, major corner. So the question becomes, what do we find on the other side when we turn that corner? And that largely depends on how we do our, Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program about being honest with ourselves and then making whole the things that need to be made whole again. Now, some things I want you to keep in mind also too, and this is all, right now we're just doing the first half of the month. because it's a very sensitive time of the month for everybody. And we really want to navigate this as carefully as possible. So Mars is making its station, or has made its station, and it will back up in the Taurus. This is an excellent, excellent thing, because when Mars slows down like this and turns retrograde, it gives people a chance to cool their heels. Like, cool your jets there, buddy. Like, slow down. So while we might see just an increased absurdity in misinformation and people playing games and literally trying to troll the entire world, and disinformation and all the stuff, Jesus, all the stuff we've been dealing with for the last 2, 3, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, with, the nodes in Gemini and Sag. With Mars with Mars retrograde in Gemini, it will slow this down. So what will happen is, certainly the, troublemakers will be out in force, because Mars is squaring Neptune, and it's squaring Jupiter, which is just going to blow like a bubble gum, like blow it up bigger, bigger, bigger. But because it's retrograde, it's going to make it less effective. So it will give everybody a chance to slow down and think twice before they just blindly accept what they're hearing. So we're going to see the the propaganda department fall flat on its face this month, which I'm looking forward to, because we have not seen the upper limits of ridiculous yet. We will, and we'll catch it. But yeah, we have that to look forward to. Now, the other thing, the hidden thing with this Mars square Jupiter, Neptune, and Jupiter backing up into Pisces. There's a thing about miracles, and oftentimes miracles are, our prayers in action, but it's also that we create our own miracles, right? Because we were ready, we were to receive it, we were doing the things necessary to prepare for it, and it was time. We earned it by merit, okay? So with Mars squaring Jupiter and Neptune, and Jupiter being retrograde and Mars being retrograde, this means that this is a very important time where we make our own luck, right? So this first couple of weeks in the month, because that Sun, Mercury, and Venus, Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Scorpio, while they're setting up this T-square to Saturn and Uranus, is also applying to that Jupiter in Pisces. This will give us an opportunity to really test our ability to manifest reality and make our own miracles. So if you are doing the work and you're getting your mind right and you are meditating and raising your vibration, you will find that the things that you manifest are much more closely aligned with what you're trying to accomplish. This also means, because these are all mental placements, mental and feeling, this also means this is a very, very important time for everybody to get it together. If you're a light worker, this is the time. If we have to do the heavy lifting for everybody else, then damn it, we're going to do the heavy lifting for everybody else. And we're going to meditate and get our vibrations up and elevated. We're going to raise our vibrations, and we're going to get our minds right. Because elevating everybody like a wave, lifting up all the boats, that's the only way we can get anywhere and save ourselves, is by saving everybody. So for those of you who are watching the video, this is what it's all about. So let's do it. Let's do it, team. Let's do it. So that's the first half of the month. It's not going to be easy. This eclipse is not making anything easy, but it's a very profound, powerful time if you use it for your inner work. When we get to the second half of the month, we have Sun, Mercury, and Venus will all slide into Sagittarius, one right after the other, like dominoes. As that happens, they will be obviously at some point moving into a square with Jupiter and Neptune, and an opposition to that Mars. So that can make things a little, not dicey, but certainly colorful, as these things go. Now remember, Mars is retrogrades, and Mars will slow your roll. So this is good. So all those Sagittarius planets opposing Mars, even though it typically is a much more dynamic, shoot your mouth off kind of thing, shoot yourself in the foot with your mouth because you spoke before you thought. Actually, this will give a time for people to slow down and reconsider what they're about to say and who they're saying it to. There's a whole lot more thought going into that. The other thing is that with Jupiter and Neptune there, because Jupiter disposits all those Sagittarius planets, with Jupiter on Neptune, as these Sagittarius planets are moving towards, they're not going to get there until next month, but moving into that square with Jupiter and Neptune, what that's also going to do is further emphasize the ability to magnetically attract what we focus on. So for those of you who are doing the work, doing the mental and spiritual work, elevating your vibration, right? Lifting yourself up and lifting everybody up with you, we're going to have some profound experiences with this. It'll be really good. For everybody else, you can expect just a lot of, well, very high-spirited hijinks around Thanksgiving, but nothing nearly as unbearable and difficult to deal with as the first 2 weeks of the month under that eclipse. I think by the time we get to the second half of the month, we will have dealt with what we need to deal with. And at this point, as we get closer to the end of the month, we will be in a position where we are much more forgiving of ourselves and other people, and we're tired of being angry and frustrated and futile and wanting to be a lot more generous and show a lot more compassion. So there's that. It will be an interesting month for sure. I had done an entire video prior to this, and of course, I'm clearly not supposed to post that one because the file got corrupted, couldn't do anything with it. So I'm redoing this video in a much more calm voice. And I think I like the first one better. I'm really sorry I had to do this a second time, but apparently there's stuff I was not supposed to give to the general public. So, some things that I want you to consider. I thought this was interesting, right? So by the way, we're not heading into nuclear war. Cross your fingers, count your blessings. We're still going to be here. But here's what I thought was interesting, right? So Putin recently did a press conference or an interview, and he literally said in his out loud voice to another person, knowing this was going to be documented and distributed to the people around him, that he honestly believes that his mission is to drive Satan out of Russia, or satanic forces out of Russia or the Ukraine. Which is a little frightening, right? A little frightening. Now, the thing about it is, we don't know him personally. I can see it in the chart, but, we don't have one to corroborate this. We don't know personally. But in the chart, we know with Putin, he's actually a very mystical, spiritually driven person. There's a large vein of mysticism or spirituality or superstition in him that's operative, right? And so him talking about this was a little concerning. So the thing about it is, right now, Putin doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have anybody he can trust. The man has murdered so many people. Like, literally, the people who are not just generally terrified of him hate him and have a reason to want him dead, right? So he's not in a great place. He literally has no one he can trust around him. So the thing about it is, we know, because this is historically true, if you're a leader of a nation or a country or a kingdom, and you are, ruling by tyranny and fear, right? And you literally, people want you dead. There's no one you can trust. And every single time what happens is when they get to the point where there's no one left, they will always turn to their spiritual advisor as their source of comfort and guidance, right? They're the one person they can trust. The thing about it, though, is we also know that, just because you've dedicated your life to the study of spirituality and religion, it doesn't necessarily make you a good person. It doesn't necessarily exempt you from human things like the desire for power, revenge, control, pettiness. Like we here with the preachers here, we see this all the time. The evangelists were like, Jesus said I needed another private jet. No, I don't think so. But listen, this is what it is. So the thing about it is, for these leaders throughout history, when they don't have anybody left, there's this assumption that they can trust their spiritual leader because you dedicated your life to God or religion. You should be above this sort of stuff, like this horrible human failings that are going to get me killed by anybody else. So what we're seeing is Putin and the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, they're like this. That man is like right here. He's got Putin's ear. The thing about it is, in Russia, there's only one church, one religion. There's only one gender preference. You're only allowed to be straight. There's like a handful of Jews scattered around the country, but it's all very quiet. So there's other stuff there, but like being gay, we know they exist, but it's just not visible, right? It's very important to stay like under the radar because you could get in trouble for that. So at some point, the people who left Russia to go to Ukraine moved to Ukraine and decided that they did not like how the Russian Orthodox Church was being led. They did not like the dictates coming from the man in charge. So once they moved to Ukraine, they made their own Orthodox Church, okay? Because they literally, it's like the Christians here, everything underneath Catholicism broke down into Protestants and Episcopalians and Unitarians, like, pick your thing, right? Baptists. So all these subgroups kind of broke out, Shakers and the Quakers. So in Ukraine, they made their own version of Orthodox Christianity, right? Separate from the dictates of, the big guy over in Russia. So you can imagine that he might be a little annoyed with Ukraine and the people in it, because how dare you criticize me, disapprove of me and the way I run the church, and then run off and try to start another church, and like thumb your nose at me, right? I'm just saying it's a possibility, and this is the man who's got Putin's ear. So listening to Putin talk about, he's it's a battle to drive Satan out of Russia and Ukraine, knowing that he's got the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church in his ear, who also, on a reasonable level, we can assume might have a personal vendetta with Ukraine because, these people started their own church and thumbed their nose at him and disapproved of how he did things. Because being a man of the cloth doesn't necessarily make you a good person. We've seen this over and over and over again. So that was a little concerning, and we know that Putin, astrologically, we know that Putin is very much a mystical, spiritually driven, superstitious kind of man. So if the man of the cloth is giving you this information because it's all about, driving Satan out, then he's probably going to believe him, because who else does Putin have to listen to? He can't trust anybody at this point. He literally has no friends left. So that puts the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church in a really, really sweet position. Yeah. So just something to consider. And all this, you can go Google it. I'm not making this up. It's all out there. So here's the thing I just want to say about that, right? In every instance, in every case of a holy war or a religious war throughout time and history, these things have been driven not by dictates and mandates from God. These things have been driven by small, petty, power-hungry men, whose vanity or conceit or desire for revenge or competition, ego, control, all those things, greed, all those things factored into them pushing the leadership that they were associated with into championing this cause, which is really just an attempt to take over and stamp out whoever these other people were. Right? So these are not spiritual dictates. These are man dictates disguised, as a religious dictate. So does this mean we're heading into nuclear war? Is this really going to be Armageddon? Is it the end of the world? Are we heading into holy war? No, we're not. Although certainly there are people who would love to entertain this fantasy, because who knows what's wrong with them? I mean, so many things wrong with them. So no, my friends, I'm here to tell you, we will not have a nuclear war. We will still be here. We're going to be okay. This month, once we get to the middle of the month, we'll be turning a corner. Now, once we turn that corner, what we find on that side has a lot to do with how we navigate these first 2 weeks of November. And these first 2 weeks of November is a time of self-inventory, the 12 steps, right? Do an inventory of things that you have done wrong and people you have wronged in your life. Acknowledge that you have done these things and go make them whole if you can. So that's kind of where we're at in the first part of the month. If we can get through that and be really honest with ourselves, right? And meditate and elevate our vibration and do the heavy lifting for everybody else. Because if they're not going to do it, we still have to do it. If you're a light worker, you still have to do it. We don't get to pick and choose who we save. We have to, in order to save ourselves, we have to save everyone. So if we do all of that, when we get to the second half of the month, moving into December, all the blessings that are promised by Jupiter will be there and available to us, and we will be rewarded for our merit. Okay? If we don't do the work, it's just going to be another day, because Jupiter is retrograde. It's not just going to give it to you. You're going to have to work for it. Neptune is there and Mars is retrograde, and Mars is going to make you work for it. We're going to have to work for this, and they will come in small amounts at the beginning, but they will come. So that is my redone version of the November horoscope. If you have any questions, please by all means put notes, questions, comments down in the comment section below, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. See you guys in December.